By the time Emily's brother put his hand on my shoulder and told me I needed to grow up and act like a man, I had already been acting like one for nearly 3 weeks. He just had no idea what that looked like when it was quiet, controlled, and already in motion. But he was going to learn. So was everyone else. My name is Ryan Mercer, and I did not go searching for the truth. The truth landed in my hands before I had even finished my first cup of coffee. It happened on Friday, February 11th. The night before, Emily had left her old phone plugged into the charger in the living room. She said she needed it because some old backup files were on it. I did not think anything of it. The next morning, I came downstairs around 7:20, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table the way I did almost every morning. The phone was lying there beside a stack of mail. I picked it up without thinking, the same way you pick up whatever is closest when your mind is still half asleep. The screen turned on. There was no passcode. Overnight, the iCloud backup had restored everything. I was not trying to catch her. I was not suspicious. I was not digging for anything. I simply touched a phone, and in the next 4 minutes, the life I thought I had disappeared. The messages loaded slowly at first. I read one, then another, then another. After a while, I stopped counting. 11 months earlier, I had been spending most of my time in Seattle, flying back and forth from Denver every week or two, sometimes staying there for several days at a time, trying to open the new branch of our company. It was the biggest step Marcus and I had ever taken as business partners. I was the one on the road, building the future we had talked about for years. Marcus stayed behind in Denver, running the main office, keeping things steady, or at least that was what I believed. While I was in Seattle building something for both of us, they were back in Denver building something of their own. 11 months of messages between my wife and the man I trusted with everything, a man I had started a company with, a man who stood in the 3rd row at my wedding and wiped tears from his face because he said, "Ryan, I have never seen two people who belong together more than you two." That man. I sat at that kitchen table for 1 hour and 10 minutes without moving. My coffee went cold in front of me, and I did not even notice. I just kept reading. Every message, every excuse, every lie. Every afternoon while I was away in Seattle working, paying the mortgage, planning anniversaries, building a business, my wife and my business partner were building a private world and calling it love. At 8:30, I heard Emily's alarm upstairs. Then footsteps. Then the bathroom sink. The normal sounds of our life together. 4 years of mornings packed into a few familiar noises. I remember thinking, here she comes. Do not move differently. Do not breathe differently. Do not let her see anything on your face. She came downstairs and said, "Ryan, you're still home?" I looked up at the woman I had loved with complete trust for 4 years. The woman I had chosen without hesitation. The woman I had never doubted until that morning. "Just tired," I said. I didn't sleep well. She walked to the coffee maker and asked if I wanted her to make a fresh pot. She looked at me the way she always did in the morning, calm, soft, completely comfortable. Then she asked what I wanted for dinner that night. "Surprise me," I said. She smiled. I smiled back. That was the last normal conversation we ever had, and she had no idea. I want to be honest about what happened after I found out, because most people imagine betrayal like that turns a man into one of two things. Either he explodes right away, or he falls apart in front of everyone. They imagine yelling in the driveway, broken plates, clothes thrown on the lawn, neighbors peeking through blinds. But that is not what happened to me. What happened was much quieter and in some ways much worse. What I felt first was not rage. It was grief. A slow, heavy kind of grief that settles deep in your bones when you lose someone who is still standing right in front of you. Someone still drinking coffee in your kitchen. Someone still sleeping on her side of the bed. Someone still asking what you want for dinner as if the world has not already split open beneath your feet. Every morning I watched Emily eat breakfast and thought, this woman looked me in the eyes through video calls every night while I was in Seattle and never once flinched. Every evening when she kissed my cheek, I wondered if she texted him the second I walked out of the room. So I gave myself 15 minutes. Every night after Emily fell asleep, I would go out and sit in my truck, a 2021 F-150, parked right there in my own driveway. No engine, no lights, just me sitting in the dark with a timer on my phone. 15 minutes to feel everything I could not afford to feel inside that house. The humiliation, the betrayal, The sharp, exact pain of realizing that while I was sacrificing comfort, time, and presence to build a future, they had been using my absence as their opportunity. When the timer ended, I went back inside because I had work to do. For 3 weeks, I stayed silent. 3 weeks of normal mornings, normal dinners, normal conversations. 3 weeks of moving through my own house like a man with a plan no one around him could see. Then Sunday evening, March 2nd, arrived. The Avalanche game was on, and I had actually been looking forward to it all week. Then Emily walked into the room and turned the television off. "Ryan, I need to tell you something." I thought, "I know. I have known for 3 weeks. But go ahead. Take your time. The game will be on again Thursday." What I said out loud was, "Okay." She was already crying before she began, which told me exactly how she had rehearsed this conversation and what kind of reaction she expected from me. "I made a mistake," she said. "A terrible mistake. I'm so sorry, and I need you to hear me out before you say anything." "Okay," I said again. Then she told me about Marcus. She called it a moment of weakness that got out of control. But 11 months is not a moment. A moment is burning a sandwich. A moment is saying the wrong thing at dinner. 11 months is a choice made every day over and over again by 2 people who knew exactly what they were doing and kept doing it anyway. But I let her talk. Then she told me she was pregnant. 3 months along. Marcus was the father. And there it was. The real reason for the confession. Not guilt, not conscience. The calendar had caught up with her. "I know this is devastating," she said, her voice breaking. "And I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but this baby is innocent and I just need you to—" "How long have you known?" I asked. She blinked. "About the pregnancy? How long have you known?" There was a pause, just long enough to tell me she had hoped I would not ask that exact question. "About 6 weeks," she said softly. 6 weeks. She had known for 6 weeks. She had sat across from me at dinner for 6 weeks. Said good morning for 6 weeks. Asked me how my day went for 6 weeks while knowing she was carrying another man's child. I nodded slowly and let the silence sit between us. Finally, I said, "Okay, I need some time to process this." "Ryan," "I'm not yelling, Emily. I just need time to think." She cried harder. I could tell she thought my calmness was the beginning of forgiveness. She was wrong. 4 days later, her family arrived at my house like they had been called in for an emergency meeting. All of them came. Her mother, Patricia, her older brother, Grant, and her Aunt Beverly, who no one had invited, but who had apparently never missed a family crisis in her life and was not about to start with mine. They walked through my front door and settled into my living room, like a committee that had already reached a verdict before hearing the facts. Patricia sat across from me with her hands folded neatly in her lap. "Ryan, you are a good man," she said. "Everyone knows that. This is painful for all of us, but the child is innocent." "I agree," I said. She paused. I think she had prepared herself for resistance, maybe anger, maybe a speech. When she did not get it, she had to adjust. "Emily needs support right now," she continued carefully. "And we are just hoping you can find it in your heart to be there for her." "Patricia," I said gently, "because after 4 years, I did care about her in my own way. I hear what you're saying, every word. I just need a little more time to decide what kind of man I want to be in this situation." She reached across and patted my hand. "That's all we're asking, sweetheart. That's all." Then Grant leaned forward. Grant had played college football years earlier and had never stopped carrying himself like he was still walking out of a locker room before a championship game. Big shoulders, loud confidence, arms crossed like every room belonged to him. He looked at me like I was someone he had already judged and dismissed. "Look, man," he said, "I'm going to be straight with you." "Please," I said, "be straight. You stay, you work through this, you become the bigger man. People respect that. You become the hero." He paused like he wanted the words to land. "But if you leave, you're just another guy who couldn't handle pressure. A guy who walked away from his family when things got hard. That becomes your legacy." He said it like he was offering me wisdom, like he had walked into my house and solved my life in 5 minutes. I looked at him, then at Patricia, then at Aunt Beverly, who was sitting on my couch eating crackers from my pantry without asking anyone. She had also picked up my remote and changed the volume like she lived there. 4 years, and that woman still sometimes called me Brian before correcting herself. But there she was, comfortable as anything, leaving crumbs on my couch. I took a slow breath and turned back to Grant. "You know what, Grant? You're right," I said quietly. "I do need to think very carefully about what kind of man I want to be." He nodded, satisfied, like he had just closed an important business deal. The room relaxed. Patricia let out a soft breath. Even Beverly stopped chewing for half a second. And sitting there in that living room with Emily's family looking relieved and proud of themselves, I want you to understand what none of them knew. Patricia did not know. Grant did not know. Aunt Beverly definitely did not know. None of them knew I had already met twice with Margaret Collins, one of the sharpest family law attorneys in Denver. They did not know the divorce papers were already prepared. They did not know that upstairs, in my home office, there was a color-coded folder holding 22 documented examples of company card fraud that could make any judge in Colorado sit up straighter. They did not know that the calm man sitting in front of them, nodding politely, had already made every decision that mattered. They thought they were speaking to a man standing at a crossroads. They were actually speaking to a man who had already crossed it, signed the papers, and was only waiting for the right moment to let them feel the ground move under their feet. That moment was coming, and every one of them would feel it. During those 3 silent weeks between February 11th and March 2nd, while Emily kept acting like our life was normal, while Grant was probably rehearsing his speech about pressure and legacy, and while Aunt Beverly was likely deciding what snacks she would steal from my kitchen, I was working. Quietly. Carefully. Day 3 after the discovery, I called Margaret Collins. She had the kind of calm, dry energy that told me she had heard every lie a married person could tell and had stopped being surprised a decade ago. I sat across from her desk and explained everything. She did not gasp. She did not tilt her head with pity. She did not offer me tissues. She picked up a pen and started writing on a yellow legal pad. "When did you find the messages?" she asked. 3 days ago." "Have you confronted her?" "No." She looked up over her glasses. "Have you told anyone?" "No." She asked direct questions. I gave direct answers. Then she set the pen down and said, "Stop talking and start documenting." I liked her immediately. She explained how divorce would work. Colorado divided marital assets fairly, not always equally. She told me to collect bank statements, tax records, property documents, investment accounts, and everything connected to the last 4 years of our finances. Then she leaned forward and said, "And because there is a business involved, I need everything. Contracts, expense reports, operating agreements, card statements, client records, every document you and your partner have signed." She had no idea at the time, but that sentence changed the entire case. The divorce was only the first move. The business was where everything truly began to shift. Marcus and I had built Mercer Lane Studio from nothing. 2 freelance designers tired of working under other people. In 2017, we combined our savings, signed a small office lease, and built a company we were genuinely proud of. Real clients, real revenue, a new Seattle branch ahead of projections. We both built it, but I was the one who handled the books. I managed the financial side. I knew every contract, every payment, every clause, every dollar that moved in or out. So when I started reviewing years of business records with the calm focus of a man who had nothing left to lose, I found things. Hotel charges on the company card. They were not huge by themselves. $180 here, $240 there. But they appeared month after month for 11 straight months. Every charge had been filed as client entertainment. I pulled the business calendar. Every single charge matched a day Marcus had blocked out as an off-site client meeting. We did not have that many off-site client meetings. I sat there looking at the records and thought, "Marcus, you used our company card. Our card. While I was in Seattle building the future of our business, you were billing your hotel rooms with my wife to the company. I printed every statement, every calendar entry, every receipt I could find. Then I organized it all into a folder with color-coded tabs, the same way I would prepare a clean quarterly report. I labeled it Business Expense Audit, because that sounded professional and quiet. What it really was evidence. 22 documented incidents. All on company time. All on company money. Years earlier, when Marcus and I started the studio, we hired a business attorney named Gerald Whitman to draft our partnership agreement. Gerald was serious, careful, and painfully detailed. At the time, I thought he was overdoing it. Looking back, that man deserves a steak dinner and probably a handwritten thank you card. Buried inside Section 14, subsection C, of the agreement we both signed in 2017 was a clause Gerald had insisted on including. It said that if either partner used company assets, resources, or work time for personal conduct that created a breach of fiduciary duty or professional ethics, the non-offending partner had the right to trigger immediate dissolution of the partnership and assume primary rights over intellectual property, client contracts, and operational assets. When Margaret read that clause, she took her glasses off and set them slowly on her desk. "Ryan," she said, "the company card charges alone show misuse of business assets. Combined with the calendar records, this is serious." 22 documented incidents, I said. She looked at me for a long moment. "You have been busy." I smiled. On Thursday, March 19th, I sent Marcus the dissolution notice, certified mail to both the office and his home address at the same time. Margaret filed the legal notice simultaneously, so there was no gap, no room for confusion, no chance for a phone call that might complicate things. I did not call him. I did not text him. I did not sit across from him and give him the chance to explain himself. No speech, no confrontation, no emotional closure. Just a legal document, precise and airtight, arriving in his mailbox on an ordinary Thursday morning like something he never saw coming. He called me 4 times that day. I watched my phone light up each time and let it go to voicemail. On the 5th attempt, he sent a text. "Ryan, come on. We can talk this through. Don't destroy everything we built over this." I read that message twice, slowly, then turned my phone face down on the table and went back to eating my lunch. That was the last communication from him I ever acknowledged. Not because I had nothing to say, but because some people do not deserve the dignity of your response. Under the terms of the dissolution, I walked away with the intellectual property of the company. Every logo, every design system, every brand asset we had ever created. I retained the primary client list, which represented about 70% of our annual revenue. I kept the office lease. Jasmine, our best project manager, called me 2 days after the notice went out and said, "Please tell me you're starting something new." David, our senior designer, followed right after her. Both of them had seen enough from their desks to know exactly what had happened, and both of them said yes before I even finished explaining the plan. What did Marcus get? The company name, a LinkedIn page with a few hundred followers, and a mission statement that meant nothing without the people who had actually built the work behind it. I truly hope it was worth it for him. After that, I turned to the family, and this is the part most people imagine completely wrong. They picture a dramatic explosion, a loud confrontation, something that ends with shouting and accusations flying across a dinner table. That is not what I did. What I did was quieter, and it lasted much longer. I reached out to members of Emily's family one by one, privately, over the course of 2 weeks. I asked to meet them for coffee, not as a group, but individually. I told them I wanted to share a few things before the divorce became public record, before they heard everything from someone else. They all agreed. Patricia was the first. We met at a small coffee shop on Colorado Boulevard on a Tuesday morning. I got there early, ordered 2 coffees, and placed the folder on the table. When she sat down, I slid it across to her without saying a word. She opened it and began reading. 4 minutes passed in complete silence. Then she looked up slowly. "What is this?" she asked. "The relevant dates are highlighted," I said calmly. She looked back down. I turned a page gently and pointed. "This date here," I said. "That was the weekend Emily told you she was visiting a college friend in Colorado Springs. You texted me that Saturday asking if she got there safely. Do you remember?" Patricia stared at the page. "She was in a hotel in Aurora," I said quietly, "with Marcus." Silence filled the space between us. I turned another page. "And this one. Last March. Emily borrowed $800 from you. She said it was for car repairs." Patricia's expression tightened slightly. "The charge is from a jewelry store in Larimer Square," I continued. "A men's watch. Definitely not for me." I closed the folder and slid it back toward her. "I'm not telling you this to hurt you, Patricia, and I'm not trying to turn you against your daughter. She is still your daughter, and she always will be. But you sat in my living room and told me to accept the situation. I thought you deserved to know what the full situation actually was before you made that judgment." Grant was a different conversation entirely. He tried to turn it into a debate almost immediately. Look, I'm not saying what Emily did was right. Good, I said. But relationships are complicated. People make mistakes under pressure. I placed the folder on the table between us. Grant, I'm not here to argue with you. I'm here to give you information. What you do with it is up to you. He opened the folder, flipped through a few pages, and then stopped. His eyes stayed fixed on one line longer than the others. Something changed in his expression, subtle but clear. You told me, I said quietly, that if I left, I would be a man who couldn't handle pressure, a man who walked away from his family. I leaned forward slightly. I need you to look at that folder and tell me who actually walked away. He did not answer. He did not try to argue again. He just sat there in silence. I picked up my coffee. I don't need an apology, I said. I just needed you to know the whole story. Then I stood up and left. Aunt Beverly did not get a coffee meeting. I called her instead. I explained everything clearly, briefly, without emotion. She gasped at all the expected moments and said, "Lord have mercy," 4 times in less than 10 minutes. It was, honestly, the most efficient conversation I had ever had with her. After that, I stepped back and let the truth do what it always does when it finally reaches people who had only been working with half of the story. Within 2 weeks, Emily stopped calling me entirely. From what I heard, she had started calling her mother repeatedly instead. The support system she thought she had built around her began to shift. Questions started being asked that she could not answer. Explanations stopped making sense when placed next to actual evidence. The version of reality she had carefully maintained for 11 months started falling apart from the inside, and I was nowhere near it. Not in the same room, not in the same conversations, not even in the same part of the city. The divorce was finalized without drama. I called Margaret and thanked her. She told me I had been one of her most organized clients. Then she said she hoped she would never need to see me again in that context. I told her I hoped so too. A week later, I launched Mercer Creative. My name on the door. No partner. No shared accounts. No company card for anyone else to misuse. Just my name and the relationships I had built over 6 years of doing the work properly. I started with 6 former clients who chose to follow me without hesitation because their loyalty had never been to a company name. It had always been to the person who answered their calls and delivered results. Within 60 days, 3 of those clients had already sent referrals. I hired 4 people to start. Jasmine came first. David followed. By the end of 3 months, we had 11 active clients and steady growth. As for Emily and Marcus, they ended up together. That part did not surprise me. What I heard later from people who no longer felt the need to stay neutral was exactly what happens when a relationship is built on secrecy. Once the secrecy disappears, so does the energy that held it together. Without the hidden meetings or the thrill of getting away with something, all that remained was the truth of who they really were. 2 people facing each other every morning, fully aware of what they had done. They had a son. His name was Ethan. And I want to be clear about something. That child is innocent. Completely innocent in all of this. I truly hope he grows up with a good life. Months later in October, Patricia called me on a Friday evening. I was in my kitchen making pasta. I almost didn't answer, but I did. "Ryan," she said, pausing, "I owe you an apology." "You don't have to," I replied. "No," she said firmly. "I do. I judged you without knowing the truth. You deserved better from me." I stood there for a moment. "I showed you because you deserved to know, not to hurt you, just the truth." "I understand that now," she said quietly. We spoke for a few more minutes. Nothing heavy. When the call ended, I stood there in the quiet and realized something important. I did not hate Emily. What she did hurt, deeply. But holding on to it would only keep me tied to it. Somewhere between those nights in my truck and the first morning I woke up alone, I had let it go. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like mine. Here's what I learned. People will tell you to accept things and move on, and sometimes they're not wrong. But acceptance is not surrender. Moving on does not mean doing nothing. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to destroy yourself for someone else's mistakes. You don't have to shout. You don't have to beg. You can stay quiet, get to work, and build something better. Emily got the life she chose. Marcus got the consequences he built. Patricia got the truth she deserved. And I got my life back, stronger than before, better than what any of them expected.